I've got this free bike that I found on trash day a few weeks back, and I'm going to replace the rubbers on it. Already did the front. I've got the rear right there. I've got a fresh tube and a fresh wheel liner. So I'm gonna take it off. Obviously the chain's already taken off of it. I'm working on getting that all cleaned up and re-lubricated, and I'll put that back together. But we're going to do the tire now. One thing, or two things you'll need really to do a tire is a wrench. This one's a little adjustable wrench, but it should vary depending on bike to bike. A tool to be able to get your bike off, or your wheel off of your bike. And then a couple of tire levers. So these are little cheap ones that came with the bike. I have nicer ones. The design on these is supposed to allow you to let you kind of like hook in here, and then ideally you'd be able to hook your tire lever into one of your spokes, a wheel liner, and a new tube. If you're replacing the tube or doing anything like that, you'll obviously need a new tube. If you're just replacing the tire, you might not need a new tube. A pump will be handy to have as well. So let's go ahead and take this guy off. So to take the tire off of the wheel, you'll definitely first want to let some air out of the tube. This one's kind of flat, like flat enough to not ride it, but not so flat that it will quickly release the tire. So what you can do is just get one of your tire levers, push right into this guy right here, and you'll hear it start hissing air. So now, it is so flat that you can get the wheel off. To get the wheel off, you'll take a look at this. It kind of has a little hook in it, and what we'll do is put it in between the tire and the wheel, and then kind of using leverage. Well, you want to make sure you only have one hooked, so. Using leverage, then you can kind of pull it towards you and then push it down. What you're trying to do is get this bead that can sometimes be steel, sometimes is nylon. You're getting that bead up and over the wheel, and the reason you want two tire levers is so you can get a second one in there and really start working the way around. If you're not replacing the tube, you want to be really careful that you're not accidentally, like when you put it in there, grabbing that tube, because you'll pinch a hole in it essentially. But what we can do is see if I can get this hooked to a spoke. Move it closer to a spoke. There we go. So if I could, yeah, see, this is where these things are terrible because they don't let you hook into a spoke. So we'll just brute force it. If you can get two in there, then what you can do is hold one of the tire levers stationary and then kind of pull the other one or push the other one towards you. And what that's doing right there is allowing that bead to pop over the wheel. There it goes. So once you get, the hardest part is always getting that bead unseated. Once you get a little piece of it unseated, it actually becomes quite easy. You can almost do it by hand and work your way all the way around the wheel. You want to take this bead all the way off. So now you see that the bead is all the way off on one side. We'll want to do the same thing for that back bead. Sometimes you can just kind of bend it over and push it. Let's see. And try to get it off, but this one's gonna fight me. So what we can do is get the tube out of there. That tube's in actually pretty decent shape, so I might just keep it as a spare. I bought new ones, so I'm gonna want to use those. And then you can kind of get this lever, and all I'm trying to do is just lift that second bead up and over the rim. So I can go in here, and all I'm doing is just lifting it up and pushing with my hand to get it over the rim. Once it's over, you can kind of grab the wheel a little bit and force it over a little bit. And same thing as the first bead. Once you get to a certain point, it becomes extremely easy and the whole thing comes off. This does have a wheel liner on it, but since the new one came with new wheel liners that are cool and red, and these are extremely old and breaking already, I'll just go ahead and take that off. Installing a wheel liner is extremely simple. It'll have one hole in it. You want to line that up with the hole where the valve stem goes through and kind of just walk it all the way around. It does get tight eventually, but as long as you hold it still, you can kind of make it go all the way around. You really want the wheel liner to be covering up all of the little metal nipples that hold the spokes in place. See, so that one's not covered. We'll just go ahead and get under here real quick. If we can. You can do it by hand too, but it's nicer to have like a little tool to get under it. And just make sure that it's covered. With the hole for the valve stem, you just want to make sure that it's lined up with the existing hole, because then we'll put the tube in place. So with the tube, just find your valve stem, take the cap off, and put a little bit of air in it. Set this guy down real quick. You don't want to inflate the tube all the way, but you want it to kind of be able to hold its own shape. So something like this will be perfect. All we're doing right now with that tube is just making it hold its shape so that when we get the tire installed on there, it's easier to kind of put in there and make sure that when we are basically pushing that tire bead over the wheel, that the tube isn't going to get pinched. So with this tire, it has a logo on one side and no logo on the other side. However, this side right here, if we look right there, it tells you which way this tire is supposed to rotate. So if we imagine that this wheel is on the bike and it always is going to rotate this way as the bike is moving, then we'll want to get our rotation arrow, which when I can find it again, which is right here, aligned with the bike. So if we imagine that this tire is rotating right now on the bike and it's rolling, we're going forward on the bike, it'll be rotating this way. However, the arrow is saying to rotate the other way. So what you would simply do is flip it around, and now the arrow will be lining up with the rotation of the wheel. That's important because these wheels have a tread pattern to them that's similar to a car tire. Basically allows it to take water, and as the wheel is rotating, it grabs it and kind of shoots it out of these little channels. So you definitely want to, if you have a wheel that has a rotational arrow on it, like this one does, then you definitely want to pay attention to that and make sure that you're installing the wheel the correct way. So now we'll get the new wheel, or the new tire, onto the wheel. We will pop one of the beads on first, then get the tube installed, and then pop the second bead in and finish inflating it. Popping the first bead is usually fairly easy. You want to kind of line it up, and then again by hand just go around and slowly get it popped over. You'll likely reach a place kind of like we are right now, where you have essentially two sections of the bead that need to come together. One section here and one section here that still need to come over the wheel, and it can be very difficult to do that. So to make sure to give us the best advantage possible, I'm going to make sure that this second outer bead is not on the wheel. And that'll allow us to kind of reorient the tire and get a tiny bit more leverage out of it. So now we can take a look all the way around and see that this first bead is all over that first section of the tire. So what we'll do now is take our tube, take the valve stem and insert that in the valve stem hole. Depending on how thick or if any misalignment happened, you might need to do a little bit of pulling. And then we're going to take that first bead and kind of pop it over the tube and the wheel again. So first bead is installed on the wheel. The second one is uninstalled. And what we'll do now is we'll go all the way around and just tuck the tube into the tire. And then we'll go through and try to make sure that the tube is actually starting to get tucked into the wheel. So you want to kind of get your fingers in there and tuck it in as good as possible. Once that's done, we can start getting this second bead over into the wheel. What you want to be mindful is kind of avoid where I'm rolling it over and it's pinching the tube in between the wheel and the tire. That right there can cause you to pinch a hole in it. So you really want to kind of be careful first and go through and really try to tuck it in there as much as possible before rolling stuff over. So you're not pinching it. And also you want to be mindful that if you're using any tools, to make sure that you're not accidentally like taking one of these sharp corners and putting it in here and then trying to push the wheel on, because you'll pop right through that tube and put a big old hole in it. You'll have to take it all apart again and patch it all together. So as we are getting closer and closer to the end, we run into the same issue where we're trying to kind of push this bead over, but since the bead is smaller than the wheel, and that's how it stays on, you're gonna have really 2 points that are getting harder and harder to put on. So what you can do now is kind of go through, feel in here what's going on. You can use your second hand to really move that tube out of the way, and then get your other hand to hook onto the wheel using your tire lever. This tube's really fighting me today, so I'm gonna use one of these guys to see if I can just push it in there a little bit more. Oh, perfect. So that went on now. You can see now that your bead is on all the way around on this side. I'll line stuff a tiny bit. Your bead is on all the way around on this side. And we can now just take our pump, clip it onto the valve stem, and start pumping it up. Once you're done pumping it up, just disconnect this guy, put your valve cap on, and then reinstall the wheel onto the bike. Get your same tool as before that you used to take it off and give it a good tighten. And that's how to replace a tire and tube on a bicycle. If you like videos like this where I do simple maintenance on a bike and show you how to do it, then subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting a bunch more on getting this bike that I found for free on trash day ready to sell.